Viewer, first they questioned the date, then they called the Prana Pratishtha pure politics, then they sulked about being kept out, then they sulked about selective invitations, then they sulked about getting invitations, then they sulked about why the invitations hadn't come earlier, then they sulked about the invitations being a political trap, then they declined the invitations, projecting it as a principled decision. Then some of their own members broke this principled stand and went to Ayodhya, inadvertently acknowledging and validating January 22nd date by seeming to preempt it. Then they said January 22nd has no significance in the Hindu calendar. Then they said, why not wait for Ram Navami? Then they said, they started rallying around the Shankaracharyas, some of whom had questioned the Prana Pratishtha. Then they said, Ram will not forgive Modi and the organizers. Then they said January 22nd is an insult to Ram since the Mandir is not complete. Then they decided to do their own thing on January 22nd, a date which they had dismissed, inadvertently validating that same date for the second time by reacting to it. On January 22nd, while the Prana Pratishtha was happening in Ayodhya, Rahul Gandhi decided to visit a temple in Assam, which is totally his right to do. Then Team Rahul sat on a road in protest after being, in my view, wrongly barred from visiting a temple. It may have been lost on the Congress that the very principle of staying away from the Prana Pratishtha and questioning its politics was eroded by this Main bhi Mandir jaunga episode. Others in the alliance, after questioning January 22nd as a date, decided to consecrate January 22nd by holding a parallel multi-faith rally in Kolkata. A fine political move, frankly. But once again, acknowledging Jan 22nd by way of reacting to what Modi had decided would be the date of the Prana Pratishtha. One would have thought that Mamata would use such a platform, a very good political move, to attack the Prime Minister and the BJP. Instead, she used it to attack her Indy Alliance partners, the left and the Congress, talking about how after a lifetime as her sworn enemies, she couldn't break bread with them in the Indy Alliance, adding another layer of the mounting pile of cracks in the coalition. Meanwhile, as expected, Rahul Gandhi's yatra through Assam saw a big turnout of Ram flag-bearing BJP workers and Ram Bhakts who were clearly there to heckle the Congress MP with loud chants of Jai Shri Ram and Modi, Modi, etc. The Congress should undoubtedly have been expecting this. I'm sure they were, especially since it's a state ruled by the BJP's Himanta Biswa Sarma, a man with whom Rahul Gandhi has an especially bitter past. Rahul began well, in my view, by blowing kisses to the BJP workers, big smile on his face, also to the Ram Bhakts who were there in that crowd. But in my view, he could easily have simply chanted Jai Shri Ram back to them, something that would have gone a long way in terms of political perception for Rahul himself. Instead, you saw what happened. Rahul angrily disembarked from the bus and stormed towards the heckling crowds. The Congress spun this as Babbar Sher Rahul taking on a mob. But the overall impression seemed, viewer, once again to be a politician aggrieved and defensive over the chant of Jai Shri Ram, which is odd given that Rahul has undoubtedly become more comfortable wearing his Hindu identity on his sleeve. This, in my view, was another missed opportunity for Rahul Gandhi and the Congress party. They ended up looking defensive and sensitive about the chants of Jai Shri Ram, and we've seen that happen before with Mamata Banerjee. The bottom line is, in its effort to tackle and downplay the January 22nd event in Ayodhya, the Indy Alliance somehow managed to throw even greater light on it. The irony, they were fully aware of the BJP's narrative traps, the cunning way in which they had decided the entire event. But the alliance managed to walk into virtually every one of those traps that was set for them. The BJP will deny that the January 22nd event was anything other than civilizational. But let's not kid ourselves. We are real, viewer, you and I. This is precisely what the BJP wanted. They wanted the Indy Alliance to stumble into inconsistent, half-baked reactions that, far from distancing them from the slippery slopes of Ayodhya, actually forced them into revealing their confusion and internal political dilemmas. Yes, January 22nd was undoubtedly civilizational. And yes, it was also political. Let's not kid ourselves. What the Indy Alliance got embarrassingly wrong is to think that by constantly pointing a finger at the event and calling it political, they were somehow telling Indians and voters something new, something they didn't know. I would hazard that most people watching, viewers, certainly you and I, are fully aware of how political everything going on is. But we also know that this doesn't in any way negate the civilizational essence of what's happening. By crying politics, politics, the Indy Alliance wasted time and energy stating the obvious and stating something that Indians now accept as part of the dance of democracy and the political game, especially near elections. Saying something is being done for political gain has no shock value. It means nothing if you're not offering anything as well in addition to it. Also, and especially since none of these parties, the Congress, the Trinamool, pointing fingers, saying politics ho raha hai, can claim not to have politicized religion themselves. The opposition knew for months, possibly years, that the Ram Mandir would rise before 2024. It was no big surprise. It was no big secret. You didn't need to be a cynic to know that this was going to be one of those landmark events weeks before the election. And they still ensured that they walked into every trap that was set for them. Think about that, and thank you for listening.